Good evening, Gainesville community. It's good to see you again, and on this Wednesday night or whenever you wind up watching this, we're going to continue our story of Saul and David that we find in Samuel. Last week we left, David had been in Saul's camp, had an opportunity to kill Saul, but he didn't. And so he left him, but he took his spear with him. And so with that, we find David waking up Saul's group, and so we're going to do that. It's the scripture is 1 Samuel chapter 26, beginning in the 13th verse. Then David went across to the opposite hill and stood far away on the top of the mountain. With this safe distance between them, he shouted across to the army and Abner, son of Ner, "Hey Abner, how long do I have to wait for you to wake up and answer me?" Abner said, "Who's calling?" "Aren't you in charge here?" said David. "Why aren't you minding the store? Why weren't you standing guard over your master, the king, when a soldier came to kill the king, your master? Bad form. As God lives, your life shall be forfeit, you and the entire bodyguard. Look what I have, the king's spear and a water jug that were right beside his head." By now Saul had recognized David's voice and said, "Is that you, my son David?" David said, "Yes, it's me, O king, my master. Why are you after me, hunting me down? What have I done? What crime have I committed? O my master, my king, listen to this from your servant. If God has stirred you up against me, then I'll gladly offer my life as a sacrifice. But if it's men who have done it, let them be banished from God's presence. They've expelled me from my rightful place in God's heritage, sneering, 'Out of here. Go get a job with some other god.' But you're not getting rid of me that easily. You'll not separate me from God like that in life or death. That's absurdity. The king of Israel obsessed with a single flea, hunting me down, a mere partridge out in the hills." Saul confessed, "I've sinned. Oh, come back, my dear son David. I won't hurt you anymore. You've honored me this day, treating my life as most precious, and I've acted the fool, a moral dunce, a real clown." David answered, "See what I have here, the king's spear? Let one of your servants come and get it. It's God's business to decide what to do with each of you in regard to what is right and who's loyal. God put your life into my hands today, but I wasn't willing to lift a finger against God's anointed. Just as I honored your life today, may God honor my life and rescue me from all trouble." Saul said to David, "Bless you, dear son David. Yes, do what you have to do, and yes, succeed in all you attempt." Then David went on his way, and Saul went home. You know, sometimes it's good to look at your job description. You know, when you've been in a job and for a couple of years, when you look at that role, it really does two things for you. The first thing is it gives you some positive affirmation. You're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing. Maybe you're even doing more. And it keeps you on task and gives you forward-thinking perspective that you're doing the right thing. The expectations are clear, and you have reset yourself based upon those expectations. And there's really little room for any deviation from that. The second part, though, is not as positive. It's the negative, and that is conviction. You can see where you failed and where you have not lived up to the expectations that were set out before you started the job. It can give you a feeling of remorse, and truthfully, it can even bring about shame. But it's helpful because it keeps us on course, and it actually will correct our course if we go off the course. So in this story, David's proclamation to Saul about God rewarding righteousness and faithfulness, it accomplishes the same thing. Saul, no doubt, recognized how David was a good man and how he could have taken Saul's life and how it could have all been over had David wished that to occur. He saw that David was godly. Saul also saw how wrong he had been, trying to destroy a godly, good man. He saw and he confessed that he was not following God as God had intended him to do. So I think it's important for us to have these moments where we look at ourselves and we see what we believe God expects of us, and then see actually how we're living. God's calling on your life is important. And I think that you need to check up regularly and make sure that you're living right. I like what Saul said at the end of that. He said, yes, succeed in all you attempt, because he saw him as godly. Let's check up on ourselves so that we can succeed in all that we attempt, but only by being true to what God has called us to be. So whatever's going on in your life, I would encourage you, stop. Look at the job description, and that job description has probably changed over the years that God has given you. See where you align. Are you doing the things that God has called you to do? Are things pulling you away from reading the scripture the way that God intended you to do? Are things pulling you away from praying as often as God has intended you to do? Are you being pulled away from actually being the hands and feet and making a difference in the world to those who are hurting and those who are marginalized in society? Those are the things that God has called us to do. And if we're not doing, we need to straighten up and fly right so that we can be successful for God. May the Lord bless you. May He keep you. I look forward to seeing you again soon.